Sheen reaches a kind of success that looks limitless from the outside. Money, ratings, leverage in Hollywood. At his peak, he isn't just working. He's untouchable, an entertainer whose name alone can move negotiations, headlines, and entire production schedules. The hero of this story is the king at the top, the guy who seems to beat the system so completely he starts believing the system can't touch him back. But the hidden side of fame has a rule. The more you become the headline, the more your behavior becomes currency. Attention starts paying dividends. Chaos becomes marketable. And the line between life and performance begins to blur until even consequences feel like part of the show. This episode isn't built around one wild night or one scandal. It's a reputation thriller where the real tension is psychological. What happens when success removes friction from your life? When every door opens, every no disappears, and every impulse can be financed, forgiven, or reframed as charisma. Because when fame turns into a permanent spotlight, you don't just get watched, you get rewarded for being watchable. And in a culture that consumes extremes, stability can start to look boring, while risk looks like power. Charlie's story pulls you in for the spectacle, but it stays with you for the mechanism behind it. The way invincibility becomes a mindset, the way a public persona can swallow the private person, and the way a career built on entertainment can turn someone's real collapse into content, until the bill arrives in places applause can't reach. That bill feels impossible to imagine during the rise, because the rise is loud. A hit sitcom becomes a machine. Long seasons, huge audiences, and contracts that are widely reported to reach historic numbers for television. In that environment, everyone depends on momentum: studios, networks, crews, advertisers. When you're the face of the product starts orbiting you, and you start orbiting the idea that you're indispensable. Off camera, the lifestyle becomes part of the mythology. Excess isn't just tolerated, it's interpreted as proof of status. Impulsivity gets labeled rockstar energy. People around you learn what keeps the peace: agreement, access, laughter, and silence. The circle fills with yes voices, some loyal, some opportunistic, all shaping the same illusion. Nothing is urgent, nothing is dangerous, nothing has to stop. And the media ecosystem, built to monetize volatility, keeps the camera trained. Widely covered incidents and public behavior turn into an ongoing narrative. The audience doesn't just watch the show on TV, it watches the show around the show: interviews, conflicts, late-night punchlines, tabloid arcs that make fame feel like a sport. At first, it looks like a celebrity phase. But phases become patterns when the environment keeps rewarding them. And once the public expects chaos, stepping away can feel like losing the only thing that still guarantees attention. This is where self-sabotage stops looking like a mystery and starts looking like a logic. Because invincibility isn't a personality trait, it's a feedback loop. If every crisis gets smoothed over, you learn that crises are survivable. If every mistake gets reframed, you learn that mistakes are flexible. If everyone around you depends on your shine, they'll protect the shine even when it's burning you. The psychological shift is subtle. Consequences begin to feel negotiable. Not because someone consciously chooses destruction, but because the world keeps proving that reality bends when enough money and attention are involved. In that bubble, limits feel like suggestions, and the most dangerous thing becomes the absence of friction. But friction is what keeps people anchored. Without it, extremes escalate. The public persona grows louder, sharper, more unpredictable, because unpredictability is now part of the brand. It generates headlines, and headlines reinforce the feeling of power. And when criticism shows up, it doesn't land like feedback, it lands like an attack. So the response becomes bigger, more defiant, more performative. That performance becomes a trap of its own. If the world only listens when you explode, exploding becomes the language. If the world only pays attention when you go too far, going too far becomes the habit. And the private person, tired, reactive, cornered by their own momentum, gets harder to find under the character that fame made profitable. Eventually, the character starts making decisions the real person has to live with. Professional relationships strain under unpredictability. Production becomes unstable. Negotiations turn from admiration to risk management. And once a studio sees risk, the math changes fast. because they're not buying charisma, they're buying reliability. Public conflict becomes widely covered, and what once looked like boldness begins to look like volatility. The story shifts from the star who can do anything to the star no one can control. And in entertainment, control is everything: schedules, insurance, budgets, reputations. When the center can't hold, the machine protects itself. This is the layer people miss. Losing a job isn't only losing income. It's losing the structure that forced routine. It's losing the guardrails. And for someone already living at maximum intensity, the disappearance of guardrails can accelerate the spiral. More headlines, more reactions, more escalation, less stability. The public keeps consuming it because it feels like drama. But the internal reality is usually smaller and harsher. A shrinking circle of trust, more burned bridges, fewer professionals willing to attach their names to uncertainty. The real currency of any career, trust, starts to erode. And once trust is damaged, fame can't simply replace it, no matter how loud the spotlight is. What follows isn't one clean collapse. It's a layered unraveling: fractured partnerships, lost contracts, reputational fatigue, and the slow realization that attention is not the same thing as support. Attention can flood in while your life empties out. It can be loud while your options get quiet. This is why the story works as a warning without needing a single villain. The villain is the incentive structure. The way the public rewards extremes, the way media profits from volatility, the way inner circles can enable behavior because saying no threatens access. The more chaos becomes content, the harder it becomes to step back without feeling erased. And the public, often without meaning to, becomes part of the mechanism. Each clip shared, each punchline repeated, each argument fueled online teaches the same lesson. Instability gets engagement. Engagement becomes value. Value becomes incentive. That's how fame turns into a weapon, one that can be pointed outward at critics, but also inward, at the self. Because when your identity becomes a public event, privacy feels like defeat. Stability feels like surrender. And the person can start chasing the peak of attention, adrenaline, domination, rather than building a life that can survive a quiet day. So the question stops being, what did he do? And becomes, what kind of world trains someone to confuse chaos with power? Charlie Sheen's story lands on the channel's central thesis. Fame doesn't create every problem, but it amplifies traits and accelerates collapses. It can turn confidence into arrogance, boldness into recklessness, and a moment into a brand. And when the world applauds the chaos, the person at the center can lose the ability or the willingness to protect themselves from their own impulse. The moral is uncomfortable. The attention economy doesn't reward what's healthy. It rewards what's loud. And when a famous person learns that loudness equals relevance, self-sabotage can start to look like strategy until it becomes consequence. Now tell me in the comments, what destroys icons faster? Bad influences, ego, or the pressure to stay entertaining at any cost? And where do you think responsibility really sits? With the individual, the inner circle, the industry, or the audience that keeps feeding the machine? If you want more documentary-style stories about the hidden mechanics of fame, how icons rise, how they fracture, and who benefits from the spectacle, subscribe and turn on notifications. Next episode, another legend who looked unstoppable until the spotlight stopped feeling like a stage and started feeling like a trap.